It is time for you to do your first pour, and you need to do it today. I know you've been binge watching YouTube. I know you've been binge watching Instagram and Pinterest, and you've purchased some things or you had some things already, but guess what? You will never know how to acrylic pour until you do it. And today is the day I want you to do it. The first few pours is where you learn the most, and we need to get that going right now. So come with me, get your supplies, let's make this happen. This is a cheap and easy acrylic paint pour for beginners. You don't need much. Gonna go over it really quickly. Obviously you need paint. Most of you guys have probably purchased this paint. We're gonna do it with this paint. You can do it with other paints. You might want to look at this video that I'll put on the screen here about how to mix other quality of paints. We're gonna mix these three colors. So I've got three colors. 2-ounce bottles, Craft Smart. This was 75 cents each at Michael's or Walmart. You need your medium. We're just gonna use glue all. If you have school glue, if you have clear glue, they will all work. We will make them all the same. That's your medium. You need some cups. I have some 5-ounce cups, which is gonna work perfect for this. If you have some cheap dollar cups, you can pour in them and then clean them out. Red Solo cups, all of that works. You absolutely need a level. If you do not level your artwork when you're pouring, if it's not level and you let it sit for the 24 hours to dry, it's just gonna pour, it's just going to tilt off the canvas when it's not level. So you need a place to pour and you need a level to make sure your painting is level. You need a painting surface. I got this for 50 cents at Deseret Industries. Anything like this will do. This is an 8x8 tile that was left over from, you can see I painted on it before, but it was left over from my brother's bathroom renovation. These are relatively cheap, great to pour on. This is an 8x10 canvas that I bought at Michael's. Ultimately it costs about $1. This is what we're going to paint on today. You need something to get the canvas off of the surface that you're painting on. You don't want the canvas sitting. If I had this tile here and it was sitting and I tilted all the paint off, all the paint would be here and be all over the place and would be hard to get up. And when it dries, if this all dries, it dries as one solid piece. You rip that up and you pull this off and it's gonna rip off of your pouring surface. So we wanna get the pouring surface off of the ground. The easiest way for me to do it are tacks. I have a bag of thumbtacks that I use. You can see the colors there. I use them over and over. I just put tacks in the 4 places. On these canvases, they have these open areas, so it's way easier to put tacks right there. And that gets the pouring surface off. You can also use something like this is a to-go cup that I washed. You put the canvas right on top. It works great. The only problem with a stretched canvas like this is it does kind of push this little area up a little bit. So you could use 2 sticks, you could use 2 pieces of PVC pipe, any of that will work. You need something to stir your paint with, and then you need a pouring surface. I have a table here. You can do this on your kitchen table, on a desk. You just need, wherever you're pouring, you want about 6 to 8 inches on every side because we are gonna tilt the paint off. So you wanna make sure you have a place that can get a little bit messy, and you want something to pour on. This is my Loli Beefy silicone mat. They are a little bit expensive. I love it, but just starting out, you don't need that. This is a trash bag, just the little red tie trash bag I'm gonna use today. A white one will work just fine. You just want something, like I say, 6 to 9 inches around that will hold your pour. So, you've got your pouring surface, you've got your paints. First thing we're gonna do is level this. I'm gonna put it down here, get my level out, make sure it's level both directions. It's level this direction. It's level this direction. If it wasn't, all I have to do is come here. Let's say it was uneven and this was too low. All I have to do is pull these out just a little bit. Both of them about the same. Level again, and then I'm level. You just want to make sure if you've done that, you're not pushing down because it'll push the tacks back in where you were before. I've also used the hooks that screw in. Just screw those in, put them down, and then if you need to adjust, you can just unscrew one of the sides, and you can do them separately to make it flat. Any of that works. Next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna take our 3 paints, we're gonna mix them up. We don't need any special equipment to weigh the paint or anything, or measure the paint. I am going to measure the paint. I'll show you how to do it. And I do recommend beginners always measure the paint so that they get the same results every time they do it. Write it down in a journal, what paints you used, how you mix them, what ratios. It will make pouring in the future so much easier because you'll know how to replicate what you did before. In this case, all we're going to do is take my 3 paints here. I'm going to get my 3 cups. I'm going to get my 3 paints, and I'm not even going to open the top. I'm just going to take the whole thing and I'm going to empty it in to my cup. Like I said, these are 5-ounce cups. You need at least 5 ounces for what we're going to do here. Once you start mixing your own amounts of paint, you can have smaller or bigger cups. But in this case, I'm using the whole 2 ounces of paint, so I need a 5-ounce container. So again, I just got all of the paint out of that. I'm going to do the same thing for this was my green teal, and then I'm going to do the same for my navy blue and vanilla. Don't worry if you don't get every little piece out. I will show you why in just a second. This method will do, these are 8x10 canvases. 8x10 is 80 square inches plus the sides. This is another 4 square inches because these are 1/2-inch sides. So 5 and 5, so I have another 18 square inches. So I have 100 square inches. So I need 4 ounces of paint for a 100 square inch surface area. And you can go to my website, leftbrainedartist.com, and search for how much paint, and you will see my article I have about figuring out how much paint you need for all sorts of different acrylic paint pours. And I have a cheat sheet if you sign up for the newsletter where you can get a 1-page document that shows you all of the standard pour sizes and how much paint those need. Okay, we've done this. We've added our paint to our cups. We're going to take our exact same containers we had before. We're going to take our glue. Now, if you have the smaller glue bottle, that works just the same, but we're going to fill these up with glue. Some people like to wear gloves when they're doing this. I have very large hands. I haven't found any gloves that I like that don't immediately rip and get paint on my hands anyway, so you are absolutely... I'm going to pour that in. I'm just going to pour this 2 ounces immediately right back in. The reason why I like doing this, especially with this craft paint, is it grabs some more of that paint that didn't come out the first time. And again, we don't have to get every little bit out. I'll show you why in a second. And we'll try not to overfill this one. You don't have to fit all the way to the brim. If it's just to this line, that's perfect. I'm going to just do the same thing for these. So just doing my calculations here, I have 2 ounces of paint in each of these and 2 ounces of glue in each of these, which means I have 4 ounces of mixed paint, and I'm going to add a little bit of water to get the right consistency. So I'm going to end up with about 4.5 ounces of paint for each of these. Then I'm going to take my stirring stick. This can be a spoon, this can be a popsicle stick, and we're just going to stir each one of these up. And you want to stir this before you put the water in to make sure that it's even and that all the paint gets stirred up. Once you start adding water, it's a lot harder to stir. So we want to make sure we've done as much stirring as we can while it's still a little bit thick. You can see this is very thick. It's leaving a mound upon a mound when I drip it off the cup. And that's way too thick for pouring. Just want to make sure all my white goes away. I get all that glue integrated with my paint. See this thing too, it's mound upon a mound. Way too thick. Now if you grabbed a metallic color or a or one of the specialty colors, or some are matte and some are gloss, they might feel a little bit different while you're, see, this one's a little bit looser than those other ones, so this was a little bit more liquidy than the navy blue or the vanilla, which is just fine, and I'll show you why. Last thing we need is water. I just have some regular water here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray. I'm going to fill these about half full of water. We're not going to use it all, but what it's going to do is it's going to grab the extra glue and it's going to grab the extra pigment and paint that's in each one of these. Now for each of these, see how thick that is? I'm putting the stick in, I'm bringing it up about 1 inch off the top and just letting it kind of fall in. It's making a mound and a mound on top of the mound. I don't want it that thick. So I'm going to take the water that I have in my thing. I'm going to pour maybe a teaspoon. See, I didn't do very much in there. And then I'm going to slowly integrate that in. My cups are a little small, so if I stir too vigorously at the beginning, it would spout that watery liquid all over from the top. So I'm going to go nice and slow. I'm going to do this again, and what we're looking for is that it hardly makes a mound at all when I pour it in. So I want just a little bit more water. See how it's hardly making a mound at all? So it's making kind of just a little cone at the top and then immediately disappearing. You can also do this, just move it around. See how that disappears within a second or two? The pattern that it makes? That's what we want. And we're just going to do the same thing for both. We want all three to look the same. Now I told you this was a little bit wetter than the other one, so I'll use less water in the green than I did in the other ones. But I'm putting about a teaspoon in. The closer you get, the less water you want to put in as you are trying to get the right consistency. And the nice thing about this is I have them sitting right next to each other. So I could just take this, both hands, come out, put it in and see how it looks. Those look pretty even. See, I used about half as much water for my green. And then my vanilla is really thick, so I'll probably have to use a little bit more even than the navy. You don't want too much water. It's easier to thin your paint out with water than it is to try and thicken it up if you've overdone it. So if you have to go slower to make sure you don't get the right consistency, totally do it. This is the most important part. This is the part people are afraid of. I do say I want them all to be exactly the same. They don't have to be 100% exactly the same, especially with these paints. They can be close and it'll be great. See, I just dumped some water out. But you'll never get a feel for it unless you actually try. That looks pretty good. So now I have 5.5 ounces of each of these, so I have 15 ounces of paint. I only need 4, maybe 5 for my first pour just to make sure I cover everything. So I have 3 paintings here. What we're going to do, I'm going to do 3 different easy beginner paintings to show you how easy it is to acrylic pour. First one we're going to do is called the straight pour. We're going to take a cup, 5-ounce cup. I only need 4 ounces for this, so I'm gonna fill it mostly up here. I'm gonna take my vanilla first, fill that up about 1/3 of the way, and then I'm just gonna pour my other colors in, straight in. Super easy. You can see how it kind of mixed a little bit. All I'm going to do with a straight pour, I'm going to take it like this, and I'm going to slowly pour this out. If you want to, you can kind of move it around. I like to do that just to kind of vary where the colors are coming from. And I'm just going to add the little rest to my corners, which are the hardest part to get. Now sometimes you see a lot of people torching here. There's some really micro bubbles here. You can kind of see them there. What torching does is it pops those bubbles. You can use any kind of torch. You can actually blow on them very lightly and it'll pop those. You don't need to do it, but again, I have just culinary torch, so I'm just going to pop that up. And then the secret to this is we're going to go to one side till it falls off the corner and then come back. Back to the middle. One side till it falls off the corner. Then come back. Back to the middle. And notice how my blue is starting to come up through the vanilla there. That is not uncommon for paint pour like this. Get the weight of that paint back to the middle. Okay, now you've done your first acrylic pour. Now if you get to this point and you don't like something about this, that's awesome, because we're going to do a couple of more pours. But I don't like that the white is kind of taking over. So on my next pour, I want to make sure I don't use too much of the vanilla. Alright, so the next pour, I'm going to take my cup here, take my center, my 8x8 tile. Again, 8x8, that's 64 square inches. There's really no sides, but I could add a couple more, so this probably needs 3 ounces of paint. What we're going to do this time is a Treering pour. So it's very similar to what we did before, but I want very thin layers of paint. So I'm just going to pour it down one of the sides, and I just want lots of little layers. So look, just teaching moment here. Look how that vanilla sank to the bottom. That's because that pigment, the pigment that's in that paint, is heavier than the other pigments. And that's important as you go along. You'll see in my other videos here. So a Treering pour, all I'm going to do is the same thing I just did, but I'm going to pour in a circle. As it comes out, I'm just going to pour in a circle. See how it's kind of making a tree ring? Like when you cut down a tree and you see the tree ring in the middle? The closer you get, the slower you really want to go. And then I just grab it like this just so I don't have something breaking up my tree ring. And then same thing. If you notice, I did not use the torch that time and it looks just fine. Next, we are going to use a painting that I did that I didn't like. It's been dry for a long time and there's nothing wrong with pouring over this. I'm going to use one of the same cups I was using before. This time I'm going to also do a dirty pour, which is just pouring the paint in together. I'm just going to use the rest, which is going to be overkill, but it'll be fine. See how that's sinking into the middle? That tells me that this is a heavy pigment, which I'm actually going to keep track of because that is important later for cells. So this method is called a flip cup. I get my paint here. You can either just flip the paint right on top and flip the cup over, which leaves a little bit of a mess. I'm just going to turn my training surface on, hold it, so then I can turn it like this, and then none of the paint comes out. And with the flip cup, we just want to let it sit and settle a little bit. And you can either lift it straight up off. I don't like to do that because then it drips down straight and leaves little rings and things. Sometimes that's a beautiful look, sometimes it's not. So what I like to do is kind of move it over to one side and pull it off like this. I'm just torching this so you can kind of see the bubbles that come up sometimes when you torch. And then same thing. This one I kind of want to move around a little bit. I'm going to go off here first. So I really don't like this corner, so I'm just gonna, I have some extra paint, I'm just gonna let it roll off that side. And there you have it. 3 cheap, easy acrylic paint pours for beginners. Anyone can do this. Okay, so let's look at these 3 paint pours. Here is the Treering pour. You get some nice color there. Nice color separation. I didn't get a lot of bubbles. I did get a couple here. Kind of turned into cells, but that's a beautiful painting. The white kind of overshadows the colors, which is normal for craft paint. The colors are not going to be as vibrant, but now you know that that thickness of paint gives us some pretty nice lines and some interesting cellular action. This is the second one. I got some purple showing through from the canvas below, which was actually pretty cool. I got some cells because I torched a little closer than I probably should have. And then a couple of these are just normal, those are air bubble cells that kind of happen. But that is also a pretty painting. And then I have my first one. The lesson I learned is I used too much of the vanilla, although the blue will show through. As this dries, it will kind of darken, especially in these areas here. But this needs to be the last video you watch before you paint pour. You learn so much more by doing. You need to find your space, use the materials you have now, learn these first few easy lessons, and then every time you watch another video, every time you look at another Pinterest, instead of saying, man, it's really cool how they did that, now you can say, I could totally do that. I see how it was similar to what I did here with the Treering pour, or it was similar to the one I did with the flip cup pour, or I see how those colors kind of overshadowed the other colors. I know what to do to avoid that next time. Those are lessons you just can't learn from watching videos. So right now, set a time that you are going to paint pour today.